So welcome everybody to this week's The Athlete Mindset discussion. And this week we're talking about leading from the middle. I think for many of us in business, we won't make it to the board level. We won't necessarily be running huge departments, but for every single one of us, we will no doubt be involved in people in some way, shape or form. So I think it's a really important topic for us all to be thinking about how we lead from the middle. And we've got some fantastic guests from the Athlete Mindset crew this week. My name's Dean Cooper. I help organizations differentiate through value and not price. I'm a sales, negotiation and leadership coach. Henry.
I'm Henry Fieldman. I'm the current coach of the Great Britain men's rowing team. I've been in the team for the last 8 years, and we're currently training hard for a delayed Tokyo 2021 Olympic Games. Stu.
I'm Stuart Innes, a former British Olympian and world and European medalist. Mike.
I'm Mike Shaw, former Canadian national freestyle ski team coach. I'm a resilience and team building expert based on my experience overcoming extreme adversity after recovering from a quadriplegic neck injury.
You're in a unique position being the cox because you're leading from the middle all the time.
Thanks, Dean. Absolutely. The role of cox is quite a unique one in sport. You're kind of an athlete, you're kind of a coach, and you sit in the middle of various roles. And for those of you who don't know, the cox is the person that sits at the back of the boat, tells people what to do, steers the boat with these little toggles and a little rudder underneath the boat. And I think for me, leadership always begins with vision. What are we trying to do? How are we trying to get there? And certainly in our organization, the kind of overall vision is set from above. Like we've got the head coach that sets the training program, sets the technical model, broadly sets the race plan. And it's my job to take that in and then deliver it when we're out on the field of play, and certainly in training sessions. It often falls to the cox to run sessions in training, and then in racing, you're calling the shots, you're calling the plan, you're the person that's in the heat of the moment, and people look to you for that guidance. So I think it's always got to be about vision, and then how your style of leadership almost feeds from that.
It's really interesting. So you very much see yourself as a leader. How does the rest of the boat see you? Do they see you as a leader within the boat or just part of the boat team?
I think just annoying. No, I think it's you move around. I think the role of the cox, you're often just scanning to see where there's a vacant niche and then filling that niche. If the group needs a bit of energy, you try and be the source of that energy. If the group needs to be brought down a bit to maybe down to earth a little bit, you fill that role. Maybe if someone's not having a great day, you try and bring them up a bit. So you really are kind of moving around various niches. I think, my crew would say they see me as a leader, but I would say that actually in the boat, we're full of leaders. We're full of people that you turn to at different times. Certainly in races and the broad training sessions, I've got to call the shots. But then when you stop the boat, then you might turn to someone else and see if they've got something to contribute.
That's a really interesting thought. I hadn't considered that before, because you just imagine being the leader in terms of the race, but I guess you're also a leader when you're not racing, which is, I guess, the majority of the time.
Absolutely. We unfortunately race about 5 times in the course of a year. So I haven't worked out how many strokes we train to get a stroke of racing, but it's going to be, Stu could give you a better idea, but it's going to be
it's ballpark 7,000 to 8,000 kilometers a year, so you can work that out in stroke.
Awesome.
My goodness.
It's amazing. And I guess coming to you, Stuart, on this, so if you take Henry out of the boat, which I don't know, may well make the boat go faster, who knows, but there are many other situations where you've been in where there isn't a cox in a boat and it's a 2 or a 4. So what impact does that have where there's no designated leader in a boat? What have you noticed there?
Yeah, so I think what's really important is where this leadership comes from when that happens. As soon as that happens, the emphasis is really on the athletes, and people take on leadership roles in different ways. I think every person in the team, every person in the crew owns their own leadership. For me, I was the stroke of the men's four in 2015, and the natural rhythm of the boat is set by the stroke man. And so I lead almost every single stroke in that regard. But the bowman makes all the calls that the cox would normally make during the race. And when the bowman can no longer speak because he's right at the end of his tether towards the end of the race, one of the guys in the middle will pick up that leadership role and just pick up the slack from everyone else. So leadership really transitions across the team in that scenario, which is a really important facet to success.
That's really interesting. So there's a real sense of shared leadership going on there. I think one of the things we sometimes struggle with in business is how do you create the culture where shared leadership is allowed to flourish? How did you guys sort of create that sense that people step up when they need to? How did you find creating that sense of culture?
Yeah, so I think that element comes from leadership from the top. I think Jürgen Grobler is the most successful coach in Olympic history, and actually his role as a leader, he's not been in a single one of those boats, but he's empowered athletes along the way to lead how he would want them to. And that's really the key, empowering athletes really across the spectrum. And when I came into the team, that was what really struck me. The most senior guys in the team were the ones leading those crews. Regardless of who was in the boat, there was always a leader, and everyone was always empowered to throw in their 2 cents. And that really does come from the top down, but also requires people to have the confidence to lead from the middle or even from the bottom.
And Mike, I guess, in your role as both coach and also being part of a team in terms of your background in skiing, but also in a potentially a solo sport, how does leadership show up for you?
In my experience as the coach of the Canadian National Development freestyle ski team, that was where I first got my taste of looking at individual leadership characteristics within a group of very dynamic individuals. Because freestyle skiing is it's counterintuitively a team sport, because it's individual. It's so individual. Each person's competing for their own fame, glory, and fortune. So when you look at the individual athletes, and you kind of know that there's these very leadership skills at the spectrum, if you will, across each of the team members, you start to realize that impressive teams are made up of impressive individuals. And the best teams, the ones with unity that are working interdependently towards a shared goal, the teams that win, the teams that succeed, have that they know that if I'm impressive, it means you're impressive. There's accountability, there's trust within it. And I've asked this question countless times to not only athletes, but employee groups. And I say, do you think you're a leader? And sometimes in the room you get most of the hands go up. Most people do think that they have some sort of leader ability, but then there are some rooms where you go up and there aren't many hands in the air when you ask, are you a leader? And then I dare to say that everybody's a leader. And this builds on Stu and Henry's points, because if you've ever had someone follow one of your ideas, if you've ever brought something unique and tangible to the table in a meeting or in a discussion on strategy, or even if it's just one of the more menial tasks that you do in a day, and someone says, yes, that's a good idea, let's do that, doesn't that make you a leader? So I dare to say that absolutely everybody is a leader in their own right, because we each bring something to the table. And any area of your expertise where that's your thing within your team, at different times, like Stu said, you're going to need to rely, or like Henry said, you're going to need to rely on different people at different times to take that leadership role, whether or not they have the big L or the little L. Whether or not you're a formal titled leader, which they're not always the leader, or you're leading from the middle or leading from the bottom. We all have it within ourselves to take that sort of expert role or that leadership role and really showcase what we bring to the table so that we can all win together. I mean, a team is a stable, bound group of individuals working interdependently towards a shared goal. And if we all bring our little bit of special to the table and lead from time to time, everybody's going to succeed.
Love that. What a great way to finish. So for me, I think the big message is coming out in there is recognizing the leader in yourself, but also creating the environment where it's safe for leaders to step up when they're needed. I love that analogy of impressive teams made up of impressive individuals. This has been the Athlete Mindset, developed by athletes, designed for business.